Every community has stories that are celebrated and stories that are forgotten. Some disappear because history overlooked them. Others were deliberately erased. Welcome to Queer Uncharted. Together, we'll explore the histories, ideas, and lives that have shaped our world, often without recognition. There is a symbol so simple it can be drawn in three lines: a triangle, pink, pointing downward. In 1933, the Nazi regime began marking gay men with this symbol, stitched onto their clothing, a badge of shame, a mark for death. Thousands of gay men wore pink triangles in concentration camps. Many died wearing them. The symbol became synonymous with Nazi persecution, with genocide, with the systematic attempt to erase gay people from existence. For decades, the pink triangle meant only one thing: death. And then, during another crisis, a generation of queer activists made a decision that seemed almost impossible. They chose to reclaim it, not by forgetting what it had meant, but by refusing to let that be its only meaning. They flipped it upside down. They printed it on posters and t-shirts and stickers. They wore it as a badge of defiance. They transformed the mark of shame into a mark of power. The story of the pink triangle is the story of how meaning can be stolen, destroyed, and reclaimed. It is a story about power, about resistance, about the specific act of taking what was meant to destroy you and turning it into a weapon against your oppression. The Nazis understood that they needed to control, categorize, and mark population. Before people were imprisoned, they were identified. Before they disappeared, they were labeled. Inside the concentration camp system, prisoners were marked using a series of colored badges stitched onto their uniforms. Political prisoners wore red triangles. Jehovah's Witnesses wore purple. Roma prisoners were assigned brown and later black triangles. Jewish prisoners wore the yellow Star of David. Each symbol reduced a human life to a category, a visible reminder of who belonged and who did not. Men imprisoned under paragraph 175 of the German Criminal Code, the law that criminalized sexual relationships between men, were assigned a downward pointing pink triangle. The system was methodical. The triangle pointed downward. This was deliberate. Pointing down meant subhuman, degraded, less than. Deviation from the ideals of masculinity the Nazi regime celebrated. The pink color was chosen specifically to humiliate. Pink was understood as feminine, as weak, as shameful. The triangle was not simply an administrative marker, it was intended to humiliate, to isolate, to declare that the person wearing it stood outside the boundaries of acceptable society. In the camps, those wearing the pink triangle occupied one of the lowest positions in the prisoner hierarchy. Thousands of gay men were arrested under paragraph 175. They were sent to concentration camps. Some were sent to specific camps like Sachsenhausen, where gay prisoners were subjected to particular cruelty. Gay men in concentration camps were not given the same work assignments as the other prisoners. They were given the worst jobs, the most dangerous, the most degrading, subjected to abuse not only by guards, but sometimes by fellow prisoners who had absorbed the prejudices of the society outside the camps. Many gay prisoners did not survive. Estimates suggest between 5,000 and 15,000 gay men died in Nazi concentration camps. For them, the pink triangle became the last symbol they would ever wear. After World War II, the pink triangle disappeared from public consciousness. When Allied forces liberated the concentration camps in 1945, Europe celebrated the end of the Nazi regime. For millions of prisoners, liberation meant the beginning of a long journey home. For many of the men who had worn the pink triangle, it was more complicated. Paragraph 175 had not disappeared with Hitler. The law remained on the books in West Germany. Homosexuality was still a criminal offense. To the new authorities, many of these men were not recognized as victims of Nazi persecution. They were still considered criminals. Some men who survived the camps were transferred directly into civilian prisons to complete the sentences imposed under paragraph 175. Others carried criminal records that prevented them from rebuilding their lives. Unlike many other groups persecuted by the Nazis, They were not immediately acknowledged as victims. They received no compensation, no public recognition, no official apology. For decades, their experiences remained largely absent from public memory. Many never spoke about what had happened to them. Some feared prosecution if they did. Others feared the same rejection that had marked their lives before the camps. The pink triangle became a suppressed symbol, something people didn't talk about, something buried in history. The silence served a purpose. It allowed societies to forget about the persecution of gay people. It allowed them to move on without reckoning with what had been done to gay men in the camps. For decades, the pink triangle remained a symbol of shame, of something unspeakable, of a history best left alone. History often speaks of liberations as though it happens all at once. For many queer survivors, liberation arrived slowly, if it arrived at all. But the symbol didn't disappear, it waited. In 1981, a new disease appeared. Young men, mostly gay men, began dying of an unknown illness. Their immune systems collapsed. They became vulnerable to infections that healthy people could fight off easily, leading to their death. The disease was AIDS. The virus was HIV. And the government didn't care. Ronald Reagan didn't say the word AIDS publicly until 1987. By that time, thousands of gay men were dead. The government saw it as a gay disease, a punishment for moral depravity. Many religious leaders said exactly that. AIDS was God's judgment on homosexuality. Gay men were dying, and the society was telling them, "You deserve this." The specific cruelty of this cannot be overstated. While gay men were dying in massive numbers, they were also being blamed for their own deaths. They were called deviants, criminals, undesirables. It was not dissimilar to the logic of the Nazi regime. Different in scale and mechanism, but similar in essence. Gay men were understood as disposable, as not worth saving. By the mid 1980s, the AIDS crisis had killed tens of thousands of gay men in the United States alone. The crisis continued to escalate. The death toll mounted. And still, the government did nothing. In 1987, a group of AIDS activists called ACT UP, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, decided they had had enough. They decided to fight back. Not with weapons, not with violence, but with symbols, with protest, with visibility. They chose the pink triangle. This was a deliberate, conscious choice. They understood the historical weight of the symbol. They understood what it meant. They understood that they were taking the mark of Nazi persecution and making it their own. But they didn't keep it pointing downward. They flipped it upside down. An inverted pink triangle pointing upward. And they printed words beneath it: silence is equal to death. The message was clear. Silence kills. The government's silence about AIDS was killing people. Society's silence about gay people was killing people. The only response to silence is to speak, to act, to make yourself visible. ACT printed the symbol on posters. They wore it on t-shirts. They held it up at protests. They made it impossible to ignore. The symbol that the Nazis had used to mark gay men for death became the symbol that gay men used to mark themselves for life, for resistance, for refusal to be silenced. When ACT UP reclaimed the pink triangle, they were doing something psychologically and politically profound. First, they were refusing the shame. The Nazi regime had marked gay men with the triangle specifically to humiliate them, to mark them as less than human. The reclamation said, "We will not accept your shame. We will not hide. We will take your mark and make it ours." Second, they were drawing a direct line from Nazi persecution to contemporary persecution. By using the pink triangle, ACT UP was saying, what the government is doing now, allowing people to die, blaming the victims, doing nothing, this is genocide. This is the same logic that produced the concentration camps. It was not hyperbole, it was historically accurate. The government's indifference to AIDS among gay men was a form of violence. It was systematic, it was deliberate. It was, in the truest sense, an act of letting people die. Third, they were reclaiming agency. The Nazis imposed the pink triangle on gay men. ACT UP chose it. They transformed it from something done to them into something they did, from passive marking to active resistance. AIDS was being ignored. Gay people were being ignored. The pink triangle made it impossible to ignore either one. It was a visual representation of refusal to be silent, to be erased, to be forgotten. The pink triangle spread. It appeared on protest signs around the world. It was adopted by gay rights movements in multiple countries. The symbol did something important. It connected history to the present. It said, "This is not new. This is not unprecedented. This is part of a pattern of violence against queer people that goes back decades, goes back centuries, goes back to the Nazis and beyond." The inverted pink triangle became a way of saying, "We know our history. We know what has been done to us, and we refuse to let it happen again." Over time, the symbol became less about ACT UP specifically and more about queer resistance in general. It appeared at pride marches, it appeared in art, it appeared in museums and memorials. The symbol that was meant to mark gay men for death had become a symbol of gay people's refusal to die. But the reclamation of the pink triangle was not celebratory. It was born out of necessity and grief. Active activists were fighting for their lives. Their lovers were dying. Their friends were dying. They were taken to the streets because the alternative was silence and death. The pink triangle became a symbol of resistance because resistance was the only option left. It was fight or die. Thousands of gay men died during the AIDS crisis in the 1980s and 1990s. Some of them voted at protests. Some of them died never knowing that their deaths would become part of a larger historical narrative of persecution and resistance. The symbol carries the weight of all those deaths. It's not a symbol of pride alone. It's a symbol of grief, of loss, of the specific tragedy of a generation of gay men dying while the government watched and did nothing. Today, the pink triangle persists. It appears at pride marches as a reminder of history. It appears in museums as documentation of what the Nazis did and what ACT UP did in response. But the symbol has also become something else. It has become a way of connecting different forms of persecution, different moments when queer people have been marked, criminalized, and targeted for violence. The pink triangle says, "We remember. We will not forget what was done to us, and we will not let it happen again." There is a specific power in reclaiming a symbol of persecution. It says, "You tried to use this to destroy us. Instead, we're using it to survive." This is not unique to the pink triangle. The rainbow flag, now a symbol of LGBTQ plus pride worldwide, was created during the same era by the same activist communities. It was a deliberate statement. We are not ashamed. We are visible. We are everywhere. But the pink triangle carries additional weight because of its ties to the Nazi regime. Every time someone wears it, every time it appears at a protest or a memorial, it is a statement. We know what genocide looks like. We know that silence enables it. And we refuse to be silent. The pink triangle also serves as a historical mirror for contemporary anti-LGBTQ movements. In recent years, we have seen increased criminalization of gay and transgender people in multiple countries. Laws being passed that restrict gender-affirming care, laws that criminalize same-sex relationships, laws that limit free speech and assembly. The pink triangle is a warning. It says, "Remember how this story went before. Be aware of the signs. Resist early, do not wait until it is too late." This is not to say that contemporary anti-LGBTQ movements are identical to Nazi persecution. They are not, but the structures are recognizable. The logic is familiar. The specific act of marking a group as other, as criminal, as dangerous. This is a pattern that appears over and over. The pink triangle is a reminder to stay vigilant, to resist, to not be silent. The pink triangle is a symbol of something profound, the power of people to take what was meant to destroy them and transform it into something that empowers them. It reminds us that symbols have power, that meaning is not fixed, that we can take what has been used against us and make it our own. It also reminds us that this power comes at a cost, that reclamation requires resistance, that there is no freedom without struggle. The Nazis tried to erase gay people. They tried to mark them, shame them, and kill them into non-existence. They failed. Instead, the mark they created became a symbol of survival, of the specific act of looking at oppression and saying, "You will not have the last word." History isn't only what survives, it's also what we choose to remember. Thank you for exploring Queer Uncharted with me. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep making room for stories that deserve to be heard.